Medal of Honor, what next? So that was the title of a video I did a few weeks back discussing the potential new Medal of Honor game should EA actually greenlight it. And within that video I pretty much touched on all the various aspects, a lot of the campaign features that they would need to address, but also multiplayer, and I did say I would do a follow-up video a few weeks later, so we're finally here, we're at the follow-up video. And one of the things I think I need to actually discuss in this video is the concept of Battle Royale. Now don't get me wrong, I understand there's a lot of people who are probably sick and tired of hearing the term Battle Royale, but it's something that needs to be addressed if EA were to, let's say, greenlight a new Medal of Honor game. And what could they do differently that maybe the likes of Call of Duty have done with Warzone, or that, Fortnite isn't doing? It's just a discussion pretty much at the end of the day, and we're going to really talk about it. Now again, I just need to state this, I'm not a big lover of Battle Royale games. I'm not. I prefer more traditional player versus player multiplayer experience, whether that be 6v6 or Battlefield's 32 versus 32. I prefer that concept of multiplayer, always have, and generally always will. I'm not a big lover of Battle Royale, but there is still a part of the community within the FPS genre that really does favour these sort of game modes, and if EA are going to make a new Medal of Honor, we'll have to let them have their sort of experience. So the major thing EA need to do with Medal of Honor and the potential Battle Royale is they need to actually make it different to the other Battle Royale games. So like Call of Duty's Warzone and Fortnite, they need to make it completely different. They need to do something more original. Maybe with the likes of Battlefield and the potential Battle Royale mode that they're building for the next game, they can get away with being a bit similar because they've already established a strong fan base that is going to pick up Battlefield regardless. Medal of Honor is still at the stage where it'll have to rebuild the fan base and even attract some new players. There's a lot of loyal players like myself who've played the games throughout the years and understand what the game is and hold a sentimental value, but there's still a lot of new players who just haven't ever played a Medal of Honor game and they're unfamiliar with the series, and it'll just stick out like a sore thumb unless it does something universally different. If it's the same, they probably think, well, what's the point of picking up this game whenever I know I'll enjoy Call of Duty, or I'll enjoy Battlefield, or even Fortnite. They have to do something different. And one of the ideas I actually had, and I think it's actually a pretty sweet idea, the only thing is I'm not sure if it falls under the category of Battle Royale. So the idea is a 100 player mode that has 50 versus 50. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, it's hard enough to communicate with 4 people on your team, how are you going to do it with 50? Well, the idea is this. So like Battle Royale will have the big massive scale, the area where you're playing, and the area does eventually shrink, okay? Now that's important to note, that the area does shrink depending on what you do. So there's 2 teams, there's the Peacekeepers and there's the Escapees or the Resistance, whatever you want to call them. I haven't worked out names yet. But the idea is that the Peacekeepers are patrolling the area and they have their goal is to keep you in the area, so it is, okay? And every time that you manage to, escape, or one of them potentially eliminates one of your people, the area either gets bigger or gets shorter. Now, for you escaping, making the area bigger is your goal. You should want to make the area bigger because that way there's more areas for you to escape in and gather points. So the idea is simple. You and the Resistance, will call you for the time being, your goal, like I say, is to escape. But if you manage to defeat a Peacekeeper, you can actually pick up identity papers. And within these identity papers, you can get access to the weapon vaults. Now, the weapon vaults are places that have your specific classes that you've created for multiplayer. And you can implement these into your experience of survival so you can, so it makes it a bit more easier to escape. You can also maneuver and look at the map and say, let's say you're talking to 5 different people, you can actually speak to your team and say, okay, maybe if you go to the western area of the map, there's an underground pipeline that you could potentially escape that way. And that is an example of the team capacity that you can do. You can actually play amongst yourself or you can play with teams. It's up to you. The idea isn't that you go into this game mode with a specific squad. You can, of course, but if you go in alone, you can actually make new friendships and you can actually develop a team strategy based on random players. You can communicate, and the goal is always to escape. It's to bring more of a team play dynamic into the Battle Royale experience, so it is. Now again, if Peacekeepers successfully defeat you, well, what ends up happening there is that the map actually shrinks. So your way of escaping gets cut off a bit, so it does, and it becomes more difficult, so it does. Now, the problem is that you as the Resistance will have is that you need to escape. Now the problem with trying to escape is you don't start off with weapons. Your goal is to eliminate at least 1 Peacekeeper and get access to clearance papers, identity papers of that Peacekeeper to get in and get weapons. Now you can't get in for your whole team to get weapons. You get a selection of 4 or 5 different players who you want to give weapons to. So if you go in with a traditional squad, you can give weapons to those guys so you can. Or if you're in on your own, you can actually see character stats. So you can pretty much see everyone who's on the Resistance team, you can see their stats. If they have a great KD, you may think to yourself, I'll give weapons to them, so it will. And then eventually when more Peacekeepers get eliminated, you get more access to more weapons and more players can get weapons. Now, this being a large scale map, what would happen is you would have access to hide and so forth, so it would be a lot of open areas like houses or shelters or even the underground that you can hide in. The goal is you don't want Peacekeepers to eliminate you. Okay, you need to remember that the peacekeepers are there to keep you in under any means necessary. Now, you probably think to yourself it's a bit of an unfair advantage them starting off with weapons and you not. Well, that's where the team strategy comes in. You need to devise a plan amongst your team to eliminate the peacekeepers, okay? Now, the peacekeepers starting off, they will not get extreme weapons. They'll get standard weapons and maybe like a melee weapon and let's say a pistol. It's just to make it a bit more easier. But the minute someone strikes the first blow, that's when all warfare begins. That's when they get access to the big weapon. So if you can successfully eliminate one first, what happens is you get the advantage of picking the weapons and then it becomes a bit more of an even fight. But the minute one of the peacekeepers is eliminated, they get instant access. So it's all about strategizing your next move, so it is with teams. So that's why this game mode specifically relies on team-based dynamics that you and your team need to build, okay? Now again, it's 100 players, 50v50. There will be vehicles and certain aspects to it as well. I like the idea of vehicles, so do, but again, it all comes down to the identity papers and getting access to the weapon vaults. That's the most important aspect. Now, within the game mode itself, there's plenty of ways to escape. So there's the underground sewer system, which I would love to bring into the game. I think it could work really well. There's railway tracks, there's potential airports. The goal is just to have an all-out massive warfare experience, but strategize it. Battlefield in the last couple of years, I think, has went too far on sort of a lone wolf dynamic now. Maybe Battlefield Bad Company and Battlefield 3 were sort of the last games that really encouraged team play dynamics. But Medal of Honor Warfighter and pretty much the 2010 game, they wanted you to play as a team, and I think implementing a mode like this into the new game, maybe you would class it as a Battle Royale, I don't know, or a third mode, I don't know if it would be classed as a Battle Royale, I think it would be lean more towards a third mode, but I like the idea of the name Survival on this, and I think as a third mode, this could really challenge the Battle Royale experience, so it could. It's all about teamwork, that's the important aspect. If you aren't working as a team, you can still succeed on it, you can be successful, but it'll be a lot more difficult, so it's all about team play dynamics, and you need to be sharp as a tank, basically, sharp as a whip. I don't know what the saying is. You need to be very sharp on this and really strategize your next move because it's so important. This mode is something I would call survival, so it is, like I say, you can get in places, you can get in houses, tents, underground, trees. It's all about engaging with the environment. The environment can also be a weapon here, so you need to remember that. But that's my idea of the challenge Battle Royale if EA were ever to bring back Medal of Honor. And I want to touch on a few other things as well. And a sort of an idea on how EA can bring it back. And more importantly, bring it back in a successful manner. Unlike the reboot and the sequel Warfighter. Even though I pretty much did like them. But anyway, that aside. So at the time of recording this, a few days ago, EA actually laid off a lot of developers from different studios. One studio in particularly, Ridgeline Games, it got completely shut down. So that Ridgeline was the guys who was working on the Battlefield next game, its campaign feature sort of were, and it was actually led by Marcus Leto. Sadly, he left, and EA decided that the company just didn't, well, studio, sorry, just didn't have the proper leadership, and they were going to just divide that studio and let a lot of its employees either go into different studios within EA themselves, such as DICE, Ripple Effect, potentially even Respawn. And that studio, Ridgeline Games, is pretty much done. Criterion are actually going to be taking over the development of the next Battlefield game that's due out in 2025. They're taking over its campaign feature, so they are. So it's probably going to feel like a completely different game because Criterion, well, they pretty much specialise in the Need for Speed games, even though they worked on Battlefield 2042. But that aside, I'm getting a bit sidetracked. So why do I mention this? Well, the reason I mention this is because EA still have that office space currently being built. Okay, so that office space that was being used by Ridgeline Games is now completely empty, but it's still under EA's books. So for a potential new Medal of Honor game, I suggest EA could actually use up that studio that isn't currently being used. So that's strike one. We'll have a studio, we'll have a place where the game could actually be developed. Now the question is, who could actually develop it? Well, there's actually another studio that were greatly affected by these EA cutoffs, and one of those studios was Respawn Entertainment. For those of you guys who don't know, although it's probably pretty universal now that everyone knows, Respawn was actually developing a Mandalorian-style FPS game set within the Star Wars universe. And the lead developer in this was actually Peter Hirschman. Now, for those of you guys who don't actually understand who Peter Hirschman is, he was actually someone who worked on the original Medal of Honor games. I'm talking Medal of Honor 1999, Medal of Honor Underground, Medal of Honor Allied Assault, Frontline, Rising Sun, and Pacific Assault. After that, he went on to work at LucasArts to develop various different Star Wars games. So he was actually the lead developer on this game, which is now cancelled, so it's done. Which also means that Respawn and EA have a lot of developers within that segment of the studio who are out of work, who aren't doing something. So my idea would have been to combine the guys who were left over from Ridgeline with the likes of the team that was being led by Peter Hirschman to develop a new studio within the Seattle-based offices. Sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there. Offices. And I think that they could actually use this to develop the new Medal of Honor game because Peter Hirschman has a lot of experience within the franchise. Obviously, I've just listed the games he worked on. But a couple of years ago, in fact, he was actually the lead developer on Respawn's Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, the VR exclusive that was created by Oculus for Oculus. The reason I use the term like that is pretty much because Oculus funded the thing, and pretty much without them funding it, EA probably wouldn't have actually made it, so I have to sort of make it clear that it was an Oculus funded game. But that aside, Peter and his team actually managed to get an Academy Award for the in-game story, Colette. Now, I don't know too much about the story, so I don't, because I haven't played Above and Beyond yet. I mean, I know, imagine that the guy who specialises in doing a lot of Medal of Honor content hasn't played the latest installment, but it's VR. I'm not really interested in VR games, so I make that excuse for it pretty much. But the point is, this game, this story within the game, actually managed to get an Academy Award, and it's actually the only game in not just the FPS genre, but the gaming industry itself that has been not just nominated, but has actually won an Academy Award. So that tells me that the team within Respawn themselves have a great storytelling dynamic. They know how to tell a good story, and the fact is that they're currently out of work now, so they are. They honestly, in my opinion, could be brought in to assist Ridgeline Games or the remaining members of Ridgeline Games in a new sub-studio devoted solely to the Medal of Honor franchise. Because like I say, you've got a lot of people who have worked on the game before within Respawn, and then you have a lot of talented guys who Marcus Leto, a guy who specialises in campaign-driven narratives, put together himself, so that he recruited a lot of these guys, which is why he was actually very upset when he found out that Ridgeline was completely done. So we have a lot of these guys who he specialised in getting, which means he obviously felt that they were good when it came to telling a story. You have those guys sitting waiting in the wings for something to do. And I think realistically, what actually sets Medal of Honor apart from maybe the likes of Battlefield or Call of Duty is the fact that it focuses solely more on the story aspect as opposed to the multiplayer. Now again, multiplayer is extremely important within the first-person shooter genre, but Medal of Honor tends to have a very good 50-50 split, maybe slightly leaning more towards the story aspect compared to the other two games. But I think if you combine these talented teams together, you're sitting on a winner. EA is sitting on a gold mine, and I don't think they realised it. But those are just my own opinions, so they are. Will EA make that approach? Will they actually form a new team with these developers? I don't know. We're just going to have to wait and see. I personally don't think they do, because EA generally doesn't think that far ahead. They pretty much just said on what's hot now, we'll do that, and that's why they're actually developing a Battle Royale game for the next Battlefield game. Probably a couple of years too late, in my own opinion, but yeah, it is what it is. But other than that, guys, I've been Recurse. If you guys enjoyed the video, if you guys actually did agree with my thoughts on this, if you guys like the concept I put together of sort of a survival aspect or a Battle Royale game, I still don't think we should call it Battle Royale, because I don't think it leans so much more into that. I think it's sort of its own mode. I don't know what you'd really call it, but if you guys like that idea, please leave a like. If you dislike this video, obviously leave it a dislike. You know, it's entirely up to you. It's your opinion. You can agree or you can disagree. But nevertheless, if you're new around here, please feel free to put a like on the video. If you're also new, why not subscribe? You know, I do a lot of stuff within Medal of Honor, and I'm trying to grow a bit of a community here, okay? Maybe Medal of Honor may be dead for the next 10 years, I don't know, but I enjoy the game, so I'm going to keep covering it as much as I can, and give out potential ideas of what they could actually do with the series. But I'm Recurse, you. Have a nice day, guys. Thanks for checking out the video. Peace.